Washington football. Woo! Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Burgundy Zone. I am your host, Kyle. I am joined by my co-host, Michael Hall, who's popping up here now. The title of tonight's episode is The Brotherhood. And there's nobody better being a soldier himself, formerly, obviously never tired. But thank you for your service, David. But to be able to speak about Brotherhood, we brought on a good friend of the show, Mr. David Harrison of Locked On Commanders podcast. Thank you for joining us on this Sunday evening, sir. How are you doing?
No, I'm doing great. I appreciate you guys for the invite as always.
Yes, sir. And the reason why I ask about the Brotherhood is because in my opinion, David, with this Terry McLaurins situation, there definitely seemed like a brotherhood was being developed, obviously, in that locker room. Anybody with an eyeball can see that. Mm-hmm. It almost would seem now it's harder for Terry to walk away than usual with that brotherhood. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think Terry wants to walk away from anything, right? I think he's put a lot of effort and stress and frustration into this organization, and he's gone through a lot and had a smile on his face through it all, you know what I mean? And every once in a while you get a little bit of a crack in the armor, like, you know, like the comment about, oh, I went out there and did a lot of cardio today, stuff like that. You every once in a while see a little bit of the frustration, which is certainly understandable. But for the most part, you know, I mean, to lean into the analogy, I guess he played the good soldier. You know what I mean? He always stood the company line and never threw anybody under the bus, never, you know, blamed the coaches, always did the right thing from a public, you know, perspective. So, yeah, he wants to enjoy the spoils of all that work and everything else. But at the same time, he also understands the business side of this thing, and he understands where he's come from, where he's going. He knows that, you know, the NFL is just going to be a part of his life. And truthfully, you know, if everything works out right, it's going to actually be a very small part of his life as far as, you know, how long he's employed as a player in the National Football League. And so everything he does now is to set up the future for him and his wife and, you know, their family if they decide to start one and all that stuff. So, you know, there's a lot to it, but I can promise you this much, that nobody in the locker room is begrudging Terry McLaurin for wanting his deal, for, you know, holding out of the mandatory minicamp to get his deal and to do all those things. They're like everybody else. They want to get the deal. They want the deal to get done as soon as possible so that he can be back for training camp and do what he needs to do. But they don't want him to sacrifice what he thinks he deserves and has earned in order to do it.
Yeah, and I would imagine that Terry's agent is probably the one that advised, because if it's Terry would show up, I would imagine. But like on a worried scale, just not obviously worried, but just concerned from 0 out of 10 on if a deal does get done.
I'm at a 1. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, the deal's going to get done. It's just a matter of when, really. And at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to get done until close to training camp, because there's the other side to this is that this organization prides itself now on making sure that people understand they're appreciated. So when Terry comes in to sign that deal, they don't want him to come into an empty building. And right now, all the coaches are spread across the country, across the world, taking their vacations, getting their time to recharge their football batteries and fall back in love with the game. They already love the game, but, you know, just get the batteries charged up to come back and attack it. So yeah, Terry's not going to come into an empty building. He's going to come into all of his coaches being there, as many of his teammates as possible, all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, I wouldn't expect it to come any sooner than at least Dan Quinn planning on being back in the Ashburn area, which I don't know his plans, but I don't expect him to probably be back in the area before, I don't know, July 15th.
David, that's the first time that I've heard that thought process, and it makes so much sense, and I appreciate you for doing that. Sorry, Hall.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, it definitely makes sense. You know, like you said, they're about to get back into the grind of things in a couple of weeks, so guys want to spend time with their families. And like I said, I think a deal gets done. Maybe it's a couple of days in their training camp or whatever it may be, but I do think it gets done eventually. But since we're leading up to training camp, it's been the offseason so far. What do you think has been the most important move, whether it be player acquisition or retaining coaches? What do you think was their biggest offseason move so far this offseason?
Yeah, I mean, retaining the coaches is a big one, and it's kind of hard to go against that one. But from a functional standpoint, I'll go with trading for Laramie Tunsil. You know what I mean? And I know that some of the concerns about him is this, somewhat public perception that maybe he's a little bit too much about himself and not enough about the team and all that stuff. My guys in Houston have told me that couldn't be further from the truth. You talk to him behind the scenes and kind of get to know who he is as a man. You understand that he's definitely all about the organization and the group succeeding, because he understands that's how he's going to succeed the most as well. And then the other part of the concern is, well, he was part of that Houston Texans offensive line that didn't really do a great job of protecting CJ Stroud. And, you hope that, well, he's 1/5 of that line and perhaps he's the best part of that line, right? That's probably the best way you can kind of go about it. But he's a 5-time Pro Bowler. He knows his business. He knows what he's supposed to do, what he's expected to do, and certainly expect him to come in and do it. And then this staff especially, this staff has kind of just built a reputation on nobody gets anything handed to them. But from the moment they traded for LT, right, that's been the saying, is LT is the LT. He's not competing for a spot. He's not competing for a job. He's the starting left tackle, and there's no question about it. So, outside of Jaden, he's pretty much the most secure person on this roster. They're not going to make that type of proclamation unless they feel really, really solid about it. So if they feel solid about it, we have no reason not to until we see it faltering on the field, and I don't think it's going to. But giving Jaden any extra time, even if it's an extra millisecond, half a second, if you give him an extra half a second, I don't know how opposing defenses are ever going to stop him. So I think that, even beyond adding Debo, drafting Jalen Lane, seeing Luke McCaffrey take a step forward, if you give him the exact same offense he had last year, but with Laramie Tunsil, then this team, I think, goes from being the 5th highest scoring offense to at least the 4th highest scoring offense.
And I wanted to bring this because obviously July 9th is the day that they were revealing the alternate uniforms. And everyone and their mother on Twitter, I made a joke saying everyone has too much free time on their hands because they were trying to decipher it. The Commanders uploaded this picture of a side portrait of a player in that uniform, quote unquote. We don't know if it really is or not. But it was darkened. And, of course, everyone is trying to light it up, brighten it up using Photoshop, whatever have you. I equated it to the kids a week before Christmas trying to find out what their presents are going to be. And it's like, just wait and see and find out. But I wanted to ask you this, David, in pertaining to that. Do you think that it's going to be like a cutting edge type of uniform that is something that maybe other teams in the NFL will try to replicate? Or do you think it's more so going to be focused on the retro going back to what was before?
Yeah, I think the primary, objective is to bring back some of the heritage, right? Josh Harris, when the rumors came out that they're changing the alternate uniform this season, first came out, we were able to ask Josh about it, and he said that he wants to tie everything back to the heritage of the team. So, of course, immediately everybody goes back to, well, is the logo on the helmet going to change? And we don't know for sure if it's going to change, if it's going to be a different, alternate logo and things like that. It could very well be that W could just be a different stripe design. It could be different color shades, things like that. Or it could be a throwback logo. And if it is, it's not going to be the profile of the Indian, you know what I mean? But it might be the spear, or it might be, I know an idea that was thrown around on social media was the old R, but without the feather hanging off of it, right? That certainly could possibly be what they go ahead and do. Or again, like I said, it could just be the W with, more of a traditional color scheme from back in the day. So I think that, in either way you look at it, Josh Harris and in this organization, they're looking to definitely tie the past into the future. So I think that's kind of what you're going to. And, I've also seen the idea thrown around of kind of how the New York Jets did a few years ago, or a couple years ago. They had a alternate throwback style of uniform, and then the next season, I think 2024 was that next season, it became their quote unquote full-time away uniform. Perhaps this alternate uniform will be a way to usher in a kind of full scale rebrand, what's not a name change and a full-blown logo change, but just kind of an alteration to the current name and logo. So we'll see how they go and do it. I think hopefully uniform changes are always tricky because at the end of the day, like, they're doing it for the best reasons. How it works out and how people react to it is going to be the other thing, the other side of it. So we'll see. Hopefully everybody appreciates it and enjoys it. I think hopefully, even if any fans don't like the actual uniform itself, at least hopefully you appreciate the effort behind
it. Yeah, I wish that would be the case, but we all know how Twitter is going to react. It's going to be one side or the other. But Wednesday is going to be a fun day overall. Just see people's reactions. So it seems to be like a growing sentiment, not like amongst like people that actually like know ball, but just among like other fan bases and just randos on Twitter that put NFL behind their name and think they know what they're talking about, that Jaden Daniels is going to have a sophomore slump and because CJ Stroud had a sophomore slump and had a somewhat of a down season that Jaden Daniels is in store for that. Do you think he's in store for a sophomore slump? And if not, why?
Yeah, I have no indications, or belief that Jaden Daniels is headed for a sophomore slump. And I think the biggest quantifiable things I can tell you right now on why I don't feel that way is just because going back to OTAs, first day of OTAs, you watch Jaden, he's in even more control of the offense than he was before. He's even more comfortable than he was before. I kind of went on my show and said, if you'd have told me this was the very next practice after the NFC Championship game and only 2 days had passed between when we saw them, I would have believed you because that's how comfortable and smooth. There was no rust. There was no, got to shake off the vacation or anything like that. And Jaden is a guy who's kind of always said like football is never, that far away. So even when he's, in Paris doing PR for the NFL or when he's just overseas traveling or when he's shooting a Nike commercial, like football is never that far away from wherever he is. You know what I mean? And that's the great thing about his job is he can literally take it anywhere he goes because his arm is going to be attached to him firmly no matter what he's doing. Right. So Jaden is that kind of guy. Zach Ertz, even though he's a veteran, hasn't gotten a lot of work during OTAs and mandatory minicamp, the work that they have gotten together, they haven't missed a step. He and Debo look lockstep. He and Noah Brown before Noah got injured. Unfortunately, they were looking even better. Luke McCaffrey and Jaden look like they're connecting. I mean, even Chris Moore, right, a veteran that nobody really even knows about, like he was looking sharp in mandatory minicamp with Jaden because the timing was so good. So like, there's just not a beat that is stepped now or that's been missed. As far as could it happen? I mean, of course, you know what I mean. You knock on wood, but any injury or any fluke situation or the ball bounces this way versus the other way and things can go south or whatever, but look, CJ Stroud's quote unquote sophomore slump was a 10-win season divisional title and another playoff win. So Jaden Daniels has that kind of a sophomore slump. I think will be okay.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now with OTAs, there wasn't much contact going on, and so it was hard to kind of gauge the new guys, meaning the rookies or the free agents. Who are you really excited to look under the magnifying glass at when training camp does come in a couple weeks?
I think Josh Connerly has to be the first guy, right? And again, there's going to be a little bit of time into training camp before we really get to see that because again, pads aren't going to come on for a little while. And I think truthfully, that first joint practice against the New England Patriots, like that's really going to be the time that you're going to go out there and just kind of see what these guys are made of. And it kind of reminds me of, when they went up against the Jets and all that kind of stuff. Like you want to see what this team is going to be, and it's hard too because and Zach, kind of accidentally alluded to it at one point during last season, but they went up there against the New York Jets. The offensive line did a really great job against what was expected to be just like a torturous New York Jets defensive front. It turned out the New York Jets weren't that good of a team. You know what I mean? So it's also kind of hard because you're gauging based off of assumptions. So the New England Patriots, we assume their defensive identity is going to be strong, tough, aggressive. So if the Commanders O-line and Josh Connerly specifically can go out there and hold their own, then you assume that means they're going to do pretty well against tough, aggressive, defensive fronts. But we'll see what the Patriots actually turn out to be. But I think that's just kind of the first indication you can really get. And then the running backs, running backs love when pads come on because they can run behind the pads a little bit and they can put a little bit of force behind what they're doing as well.
Yeah, agree with that. And speaking of running backs, this goes to my next question. Obviously, they got Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, two veterans in front of the rookie Krosky Merritt. Do you think there's a path for him to actually get significant touches this year, or is this kind of a filled out kind of year for him, undrafted or a 7th-round pick, and kind of work him into the fold eventually down the line?
Yeah, I think the expectations for Jacory should be set at, learn and grow and get a year of NFL experience under your belt. That should be where the expectations are set. And I know that some fans don't want to hear that. You know what I mean? I know some people think that he's going to be RB1 and, point to Brian Robinson Jr. and his first year out of Alabama. By the time training camp ended, he was the top dog and all that stuff. But, I look at it and I just think that, the way that the system is run, the way that these guys want to kind of balance each other out and the way that they want to approach the offense, that experience, that knowledge of the system is going to weigh very, very heavily on who gets on the field first and who gets the reps, right? I think that if Jacory, he's a 7th-round pick, man. If he can come in and be the 3rd running back in the pecking order, that's a great, great achievement for a 7th-round running back, and you actually look at Jeremy McNichols. Jeremy McNichols was a late-round running back himself out of Boise State, ends up not even sticking around the team that drafted him for very long, right? So you just those types of picks don't typically pan out. And, I think it speaks also a lot to the confidence in Adam Peters, which I think is great. I'll be truthful. It's actually funny. It's a little bit of a situation where, I came into it. Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt was a guy that hit my radar during the draft process. And so when they drafted him, I was very excited. I'm like, oh man, this kid is good, better than a 7th round pick, probably would have been a 4th rounder had he got a full year of play last year at Arizona, these types of things. And now I'm on the other side having to tell people, hey, like kind of pump the brakes a little bit. Let's not build up the expectation too high and put too much pressure on him. But the good thing about Ja'Cory is he's taking everything in stride, and he doesn't, he hears the love and he appreciates the love, but he doesn't feel any pressure to, deliver on that love for other people. He's just taking it, one step at a time, taking his coaching and taking advantage of the opportunity that he has ahead of him.
Yeah, obviously he portrayed himself very well, working hard that year that he was taken off the field, and he still worked hard and showcased himself and his abilities, right? To wrap this up, only a couple more questions for you, David. One hypothetical that we have been talking about in our Discord, I've asked other guests this as well, but I wanted to get your opinion. Is a premier edge rusher a key factor in overall team success?
I mean, you love to have one, right? But like, do you need one? No. Like, it's the question of, do you need a quarterback to be successful in the National Football League? I've kind of always said you either need a killer quarterback or you need a killer defense. One of the two. You can't have neither and be successful, right? Guys like Trent Dilfer have Super Bowl rings because they played on teams with killer defenses. I mean, honestly, Tom Brady, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, like he's a killer in his own right and all that stuff. But that Super Bowl run, that Tampa Bay Buccaneers defense was the killer. They killed Patrick Mahomes and Tyreek Hill in that Chiefs offense in that game to get Tom Brady that 7th ring, and that's not to take anything away from Tom Brady for any Tom Brady stands out there. But, it just kind of is what it is, right? We've seen Peyton Manning win the Super Bowl with a killer defense. So can an elite pass rusher, make the world a difference? Sure it can. But, Myles Garrett is also sitting there in playoff purgatory and championship ring heck and all that stuff because it's just not the most important position on the field. Would you love to have one? Absolutely. Do you need one? No, you don't. And, look at the Philadelphia Eagles, man. I mean, their best, non-down lineman pass rusher, probably, I guess, just depending on who you talk to, depending on which level. Right. Josh Sweat certainly in that conversation, if not the guy. They didn't even make too serious of an effort to even retain him. So he's in Arizona now, and the Eagles are looking elsewhere. So it just kind of shows you that, you love to have him if you can get him, but you don't have to have him.
And my wife got me this book, David, and it talked about crabs in a barrel. And I'm not sure if you are familiar with that term. And it almost seems like Cam Newton's comments on Jaden Daniels is somewhat of that same ilk, right? Where there's one crab trying to crawl itself out of the barrel and the rest pull him back down, right? And do you put any stock into what Cam Newton is saying about Jaden Daniels?
I'm not familiar with Cam's comments, to be quite honest with you. I'm not really sure what he was saying about Jaden.
He has similarities to RG3 and being a one-hit wonder in that sort of capacity. As much as his comments were probably more ridiculous than Walle's outfit in the video.
Yeah, I mean, he's only played one season. I mean, let's let him play 2 or 3 seasons before we start talking about whether or not he's going to be a one-hit wonder. Yeah, like I said, I know one of the writers that on SI wrote the Cam Newton comments and the Wale comments. I didn't write them, and I truthfully, I don't know. I don't want to be disrespectful, but I don't really care what Cam Newton thinks about Jaden Daniels.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, to wrap this up, last question I have for you. Who will be starting next to Daron Payne? And I say that loosely because I do believe that they're going to have a heavy rotation up front. But in years past, it was very easy for us to say who was going to be on the D-line. It was Jonathan Allen and Daron Payne starting. How do you think that D-line is going to shape out?
Yeah, I think it's hard because I think like from a snap standpoint, Javon Kinlaw is certainly going to be up there, but Javon is also going to play. He's going to play inside. He's going to play outside. Dietrich Wise can reduce down inside. He can play outside. Johnny Newton plays inside, obviously, but he can also play outside in certain looks. Like, I don't know that you can really look at this year's defense and pinpoint and say, this is your D tackle. I mean, even Daron Payne, like, he's never going to play wide 9, right? Like, he's never going to be outside the tackle and all that kind of stuff. But like, he might be the furthest, edge, down lineman in a formation, making him, you can call it the edge if you want to, depending on how far outside he gets. But I think it's really it's kind of defenses, especially like with Joey Jr. and Dan Quinn. It almost kind of is starting to resemble basketball, where you have a lot of guys like basically just call them down linemen and linebackers and safeties and DBs. You know what I mean? It's almost so fluid that you just have guards, forwards, and sometimes you don't even have a center. You just have big men. You know what I mean? The days of having like a Shaq at the nose are kind of, I don't say gone, but for most defenses, they're really kind of not there. Like I look at a guy like Vita Vea, for again to kind of reference the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and like he's kind of that, he's much bigger, but he's kind of that Deron Payne type of mold, where he's probably the most isolated player on the roster. He and Eddie Goldman, right? But the rest of those guys, even a guy like Sheldon Day, like I think Sheldon Day, most of his reps will come in the A or B gap, right? But I think you could certainly see him play a little bit further wide than that in certain looks if you need him to. So I don't know that you can necessarily pinpoint like here's your starting D tackles, because I go back to last year too, and Joe Witt saying he's got like 21 starters. I think that's a little high of an estimate, right? But he has more than 11 starters, quote unquote. It just depends on the opponent, the situation, and where they're at.
Absolutely. I told you that was the last one, but we talked about this a little bit. That video of Magic Johnson of his yacht where he was working out on the treadmill, showing off that nice yacht on that very nice island. Is there anything that you would show off via drone footage, David?
I don't think so. I'm kind of I'm not a private person in the sense that like I don't want anybody to know anything about my life. I just don't feel the need. That's why I kind of tell people like, even on like Facebook, like I don't really post, like family photos and vacations. And pretty much everything I do is work related as far as like social media is concerned. Again, I'm just kind of an internal person in that way. I mean, I've got a good life, man. You know what I mean? And, I don't think Magic was trying to make anybody feel bad about, his life versus anybody else's life either. But I would look at it and just, I would hate to think that, I share something from my life and make somebody feel down about theirs, because I think we're all just out here doing our best to live the best life we can. So I keep it all to myself, man. Just enjoy, the fruits of my labor and what my wife has been able to build with me over the last 20 plus years and dealing with me. She's certainly been rewarded, hopefully. But I think I would. I'm not a photo of my yacht type of guy. So
my man, keep that yacht private, David. Obviously, very, very smart. I've
got a couple Heisman Trophy winners behind me. Like that's probably the most
there you go
flexing I'll do.
My man, David. Before you get out of here, would you like to plug your social media handle and your show, sir, just in case anybody watching wants to come follow and watch?
Yeah. So Twitter is dharrison82. I don't tweet much, like I said. So follow at your own risk if you want to. But Locked On Commanders is where you can find my stuff 5 days a week, most of the time, unless I'm sick, which I was a couple weeks ago. And then WUSA9.com is where I'm doing more of my, not really long form, but definitely more in-depth Commanders reporting. And then on SI is a little bit more blog style, a little bit shorter form type of stuff. So a little bit of everything for anybody out there.
Yeah, and I know that a couple of guys in our Discord hold your show in high regard. So I know you do a great job and consistent in that regard. David, have a great Sunday. Enjoy your week, sir. I know you're looking forward to training camp. Enjoy it.
Oh, yeah. Appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Have a good one, David. All right, everybody. We just spoke with David Harrison. Always appreciate David. And David is smart that he would not go about in sharing his private life and everything like that. What would you show off?
It's funny. That's a good question. What would I show off if I had it? Like if I had it, or like what I have now?
What you have now, man?
What I have now? I don't know. Probably just my family.
Fish you caught on vacation?
Yeah. I mean, I guess either that fish or maybe just my family. I don't really have anything of like high value other than like my family. So
smart boy you are. I'm under the same ilk. If anything, I was thinking about this. It would be my new mower. I got a John Deere mower, so I'm a deer man now, and I would definitely be showing that off in that Zoom footage of me riding around the tractor, right? Or my new grill that I got. We cook steaks.
I was gonna say I'll show off the grill, but I like to grill, so I'll show off my grill.
There you go. Yeah, because we just got one. We cooked steaks yesterday and hot dogs for the kids. It came out perfectly. I chefed them up, seasoned them up, made sure Catherine wasn't looking when I did that. because she thinks I overseason things, and then when she gets the meal, she's like, "Oh, this is amazing!" Like, oh, I'm chefing, let me do my thing. But it was great, perfectly medium rare it was awesome. But I would definitely show off the new mower, absolutely, without a doubt. Now, let's wrap up this episode, brother, by answering some fan questions. Reed ghosted us once again. But I wanted to ask you a question that was submitted by the Colonel before we get into James's question. The Colonel's question is, will Terry holding out and Noah Brown and Michael Gallup suffering injuries, which receivers on the depth chart are getting those snaps, and have any of them taken advantage of those opportunities enough to get noticed by the coaches?
I think Noah Brown got injured maybe like towards like the one of the last OTA sessions or something like that. So I don't think there was a lot of chance for anyone else to get those like extra reps. I mean, obviously someone stepped in for him and took the reps. So I would probably say that was Luke McCaffrey just by based on the pecking order of things, and everyone else behind him is either a veteran that's more than likely a camp body or like a practice squad body, or they're rookies or like younger guys. So I would assume that Luke being second year in the system and the higher of the draft picks of those guys that are also in the room with him, he would probably step in and get those reps. But David Harrison talked about Chris Moore, who has been in the league for a couple years now, veteran, more than likely a bottom of the depth chart receiver, or maybe a practice squad guy, something of that
You
nature.
could
But
compare him with like Jamison Crowder of last
yeah,
year, being that
yeah,
vet to come in and just be that reliable person, right?
exactly. But yeah, we all know like once Terry gets back, steps in, he's gonna get all the reps, get all the work that he needs. But again, second year in the system, a guy that we know works hard is probably going over the playbook, going over whatever he needs to do and get ready for training camp. But yeah, I would just say as of right now, hopefully we haven't got an update on Noah Brown, which is probably a good thing. So I think that the receiver room once Terry gets back should shake out pretty good,
Yeah,
barring
and
injuries.
I feel like I've said this on every show. We're not going to find out anything on Noah Brown until training camp comes around. Dan Quinn did it perfectly in his ending presser by saying, like, we don't have any updates right now. And he knew that was his last one. He didn't have to answer anything on it. There's no reason to cause concern. If there is a reason to concern, let's let time play it out. During the season, you don't really have that benefit because you'll be constantly asked about it. Well, with the hiatus until training camp, you can kind of wait it out. We won't find out until training camp what's going on with Noah. But I would say Deebo Samuel, without a doubt, took advantage of the opportunity that he had at OTAs and minicamp, where he kind of showcased his leadership style, his his want to show that he is a team guy. Obviously, being an outsider, Adam Peters Deebo coming in knew about the brotherhood aspect of the Commanders and very much wanted to not force his way in, but just gel and feel himself into the situation, which he obviously did and made a mark on a lot of people. It definitely helps. Like you heard David talk about this, where like it seemed like every receiver was on the same page with Jaden Daniels. It certainly helps to have Jaden Daniels throwing you the football in an accurate manner. With that being said, we do have to take into consideration that during that time, it's not like they're doing a crazy amount of physical work. So there's a lot of the 7-on-7s, right? So everything is not exactly like it's going to be on Sundays. It's supposed to be that way.
The timing's supposed to be perfect.
Right. We heard Selby talk about Luke McCaffrey standing out, looking like he's improving, not on a physical muscle sense, but more so just being where he's supposed to be with his route tree. And we heard last year that he was getting open a lot, but Jaden just wasn't targeting him. Well, hopefully the OTAs in that section was able to help Luke and Jaden's confidence build, so Jaden will be able to find him more and more. We haven't, besides a handful of guests have talked about Jalen Lane. Very interested to see how he does in this training camp session. He's most likely going to have to showcase himself with like Marcus Mariota or Sam Hartman to begin training camp. And if it continues to show out in that sort of capacity, then maybe we'll be able to see him with Jaden Daniels and what his productivity could possibly be looking forward. But I would say without a doubt, I think I'm not trying to cop out, Colonel, but it certainly seems like even Ja'Cory Brooks, the undrafted free agent, was showing off a little bit, was doing very well, was making a name for himself in those sessions. So I think it's every receiver really showcase themselves. And that's why somebody like Noah Brown and Terry would very much be interested in being able to come back and help contribute because Jaden, when you have 5, things are better. You know what I mean? The next question from the Colonel. There hasn't been a lot of criticism of AP's offseason moves. One exception is Javon Kinlaw and his contract. Why does he still have haters? He's essentially replacing John Allen, who only started 8 games for us last year. Kinlaw started all 17 games for the New York Jets in 2024. WTF?
Yeah, I think people just look at because a lot of people, they don't really know, like, they're just basically looking at his stat line, where he was drafted at, his stat line throughout his career, and basically just I guess, kind of the beat reporters that came on the radio or different stations, different social media outlets, and kind of talked about how he was a he's always talked about as a player that's not lived up to his potential, basically, and that's just kind of been echoed throughout the beat reporters and whatever it may be. But I just feel like AP knows him, and then also people were like freaking out over the contract of all the guaranteed money he got, the AAV and whatnot. But as people have said many times, if you look at the defensive tackle like pay rates and what he got paid, it was like a 4th tier type of contract, which is basically everyone looks at him as like a 4th tier type of defensive lineman. So the contract was just basically what it is because of the salary cap going up, and that's kind of the going rate for that tier of player as it is right now in the NFL. So yeah, I mean, it's on him to prove the haters wrong and go out there and show what he can do on the field, and hopefully he proves AP, he proves DQ, and he proves everyone right, including himself, that he is the player that this coaching staff thinks he can be. So I'm just again, they haven't done anything yet for me to be like point the finger and say this is the wrong thing, because I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt because right now they're 1 for 1. All the majority of the signings and draft picks they had last year, they came in and contributed. So I'm going to give them the grace period of they know what they're doing, they know what they want out of this player. Let's see how it plays out in training camp and then on Sundays.
Yeah, it definitely seemed like for the Jets last season, it seemed like Javon Kinlaw was like the scapegoat.
Everyone seemed checked out on that entire team at one point. So
That's
it's like,
exactly what my viewpoint was. Is that like it's hard to be able to put blame on him for his play last season when it seemed like it was just all over the place. It was essentially a circus with how they were being dealt with and what transpired there. So I do have to put that caveat in there, and we also have to remember that a lot of the guys, like Frankie Louvu, for instance, even looking at Dante Fowler, like we weren't really expecting them to have the year that they did. And so we had to take into consideration that Javon Kinlaw could do better than he did last year, especially with his defensive staff and Dan Quinn highlighting guys' as superpowers. And the one thing you can say about Javon Kinlaw is the interior pass rush is his forte. That is his strength. And so you have to leave it open to the idea that he could be very influential in the middle of the field and suffocating a quarterback. We talked about this in the pass rusher debate. What is, like, if you need a premier edge rusher or not? And I totally agree with this, even though I've been screaming about the edge rusher position even before the draft. That interior pass rush is way more disruptive than in the exterior pass rush, because the quarterback has nowhere to go. If your edge rushers are setting the edge and creating that wall, right, almost like a curved wall around the quarterback, the only way a quarterback has to go is out. They have to go backwards or out. And if you're able to get up the middle, they have nowhere to step into. If you could go back years ago when John Allen, Deron Payne, when everyone was screaming about our defensive line not being in their gap assignments, quarterbacks would, for a field day, would see that wide open middle of the field and just run right through it and be able to pick up first downs. And that's why the interior pass rush in the middle is so important, and that's something I think Javon Kinlaw could certainly do well at. So why does he have haters? I think it's because he just had a bad year on the Jets last year. And it's hard to preach rationality and logic with this kind of excitement that people get, especially about the Commanders. I mean, if the uniforms itself weren't enough of an indicator of how people were going to react. We all know this, and it's just it's Madden-esque in the way that they think about things, right? And
I think people are still like in the past years of like players coming in, getting a big contract, what they perceive as a big contract or a contract that they've not earned yet, and then they come out and they don't perform up to that contract, and we're just sitting here getting joned on and burned by other fans and whatnot. So I just feel like it's just all the years of that type of like stuff that's built up in people, and it's going to take years to untwist and unwind all that type of thinking. But like I said, you just got to trust that right now they're 1-for-1. This whole new regime, you just got to let them play everything out.
yes, and why does he have haters? And it's specifically because of the money he was given based on how he played last year. But we also have to take into consideration his contract at face value is not as much as it's being portrayed as. I think the guarantee, honestly, is only 30 or something along those lines. It was not that much as it was being portrayed on. So you couple it with the contract amount that people are being told is how much it is, when in reality the guarantees are not that high. But with how he played last season, and you automatically get the disdain, you automatically get like, haha, you guys paid that much for Javon Kinlaw? And it's like that sort of thing. So just take into consideration, I know his money was similar to how much John Allen got paid. And so that's what I mean by we have to give the staff the benefit of the doubt in knowing what they want to do. Because the one thing about John Allen is good against the run, obviously a good leader. But maybe that's not exactly what they truly wanted. They wanted a disruptor in the middle, especially on those passing downs. As much as it has been voiced that they want to be able to stop the run, it makes sense that they added the premier pass rusher from the interior and then surrounded him with some very stout run defense guys. That way you kind of are helping yourself in both areas, right? Being able to create that interior pass rush, but also solidifying, making sure out wide and in the middle you're not getting beaten to death like we saw last season. And this little caveat from the Colonel I thought was hilarious. He uploaded this. I saw this when I was investigating today. Commanders roasted for draft blunder that fans predicted from the start, which is a picture of Emanuel Forbes. And he said, I wish I could go back to the Burgundy Zone episode where Reed was busting my balls for me asking incredulously if we were going to draft a 166-pound quarterback. And look, man, I tried to positive my way out of that one. But if you go back to that draft night when we had a live show and we uploaded it, and I was blown away. I mean, Christian Gonzalez was sitting there. I was talking
Literally, everyone was like, we got Gonzalez. He dropped to us. Like, oh, my God.
Yeah, I was arguing with AJ in the pre-draft process because I was saying that this guy's a lockdown corner. Like, if he falls to you take him. And he was like, I don't think he's going to be a lockdown corner in the next level. I was like, whatever. Like, you know football, I guess. And so, I remember, and that came up, and I was like, oh, my goodness, we're going to get Christian Gonzalez. And, of course, that didn't happen. And, I wanted to be excited, but when that draft, it really made me rethink my way of thinking in draft. Like, what am I missing? Am I missing something? Am I off on my evals? What have you? And somebody has said, well, you ended up being proven right. And I still hold out hope for Emanuel Forbes that he's able to bulk up. Obviously, he didn't take everything as seriously as he was supposed to, and his work ethic and getting better and adding weight and size, but it sucks that ended up happening. But that being said, if that didn't happen, if we did get up Christian Gonzalez, would we have Adam Peters right now? Would we have Dan Quinn and company?
That's been my whole point where it's like, yeah, everything sucked for that 3-4 year stretch, or whatever it may be, or that 3 year stretch, 3.5 year stretch.
Complain about Rivera and his draft picks all you want, but that's what gave us Jaden Daniels.
Exactly. I'm like, look, all that suckiness and failure and discourse and ridiculousness off the field led us to Adam Peters and Josh Harris and Jaden Daniels specifically. So, yeah, and all that was a horrible time, and Washington fandom, especially for out of all the years of horribleness, that was the worst of the worst. But it's what do they say? Whenever the flowers grow through the concrete or whatever that saying is. Yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure if I've ever heard that one. I've heard my uncle.
Rose can grow because they're flowers can grow through anything, including concrete. You always see grass coming through like the cement and stuff
Well,
like that.
that's just a bad job by them.
Yeah.
But I remember Gene, my uncle, my boss, because he's bald, and obviously I'm heading that way too. But I shave my head.
Me
But
too.
he used to always say, "Grass don't grow on a busy street." You know, talking about how smart he is and how much he thinks. Grass don't grow on a busy street. And then the counter to that is, grass don't grow on rocks either. So if you ever hear that, just rebuttal with that one. But this
Right.
next question is from James Bonato. He said, I started following the Redskins when Sonny Jurgensen was quarterback, and there wasn't a color commentator back then. Years later, Frank Herzog came aboard, and for some reason, thought we listeners wanted to hear more about him than the team. Were you, Hall and Reed, too young to remember him? JP Finley is a refreshing contrast to Herzog, in my opinion. Are you gents happy with him?
So I never really like listened to any of the radio calls just because most of the time I was at home, like on my couch when I was younger, like in front of the TV watching it. Every once in a while when I was like younger and like coming from church, because if church would like run overtime, because that's what black churches do, they just never end on time. But so we'd have to like we have to turn the radio on. Have to turn the radio on. Like I didn't. I guess I don't even know what channel it was back in the day. Maybe it was 106. I don't even know. But my dad would like find the station, and I'd listen to maybe like 5, 10 minutes max of like the radio call, and then I would just jump out the car and run inside and get in front of the TV to watch the game. So I don't really have any type of like great recollection of like Sonny and Frank calling the games, other than 5 or 10 minutes once in a blue moon here and there. But as far as JP, I know JP gets a lot of flack. Everyone like hates on him. I don't mind him. I listen to him and B Mitch every day. I don't really mind JP. I know people in the fan base give him a hard time and whatnot, but sometimes he deserves it. But he's all right in my book.
So I think James is a little bit mistaken here because JP isn't the color commentator, right? He has his show. He's a
Yeah, he's just like
reporter, right?
one of
Like
like the
he's not
top beat
he's
beat
not
guys.
commentating on the game, right? That's Bram, that's London,
Yeah,
and I think with Bram in particular, I kind of hated on Bram a little bit in the way things were being done, but ultimately Bram has been great at his job. Obviously, formerly of ESPN. I'm not sure if he still works for ESPN or not,
I don't
but
think so.
obviously he is calling the games. And
Or no, he does ESPN radio, so maybe he
oh
does.
yeah, you're right. You're right. You're absolutely right. My bad. But he has Empire Radio as well. But Bram has done a fantastic job of encapsulating the excitement from a fan perspective in the plays of the game. You can see that in the replays. He does a phenomenal job. In terms of JP, like me as a Christian, and between you and I'm a Christian man, and you are too. You don't have to refer to black churches. You could just say church. All
I
right.
know.
You don't. You
I
don't
was
have
making
to
a
add
joke.
that in there. It's
I
just
was making a
church.
joke.
I know, but just saying. But in regards to that, I think that JP, I've had to like JP no called no showed us, and the one time they did come on here, it was very like don't want to be here, don't want to answer anything. And I get it. We all have life outside, and it's hard to listen to three idiots ask you dumb questions. And I get it. I totally do. But in that regard, I'm happy that he won an award that I think it was Mike Tirico gave to him.
Yeah, yeah.
So very happy for him. I'm not gonna say I'm happy. It's not doesn't move my needle in my life, so to speak. But I do think that Bram, being the color commentator, analyzing the games, portraying what's happening and the excitement level of it, I think he's doing a phenomenal job. That being said, his last question was sorry. His last question was, lastly, who are your favorite national analysts slash play-by-play guys? Mine is Tony Romo. I also am a fan of Andrew Siciliano, the guy with the ears, but don't see much of him nowadays.
Yeah, I think he's a more of like an NFL Network guy. Slash, he
Yes.
does I think he just got
He's got a
um
fantastic voice.
yeah, I think he does the Cleveland Browns games now because one of the old dude that was doing it for like years and years retired, and they gave him the job now, which is like his dream job because he's from Cleveland. But
Yeah.
anyway, um, national people, I like Ian Eagle. He's good. Obviously, Mike Tirico's good. Uh,
That's mine. Mike Tirico is by far
yeah.
the best.
What's his name? He does college football. Gus.
Um,
Uh, he does Fox. Gus. He's like a short dude.
Not
I forget his
Johnson.
Gus Johnson, yes, Gus Johnson, I think his name is, but that dude's a beast at college football. I wish he did some NFL games. I feel like his excitement on the NFL level would be a very good call. But yeah, those are some of the guys I like to listen to or like watch whenever they got the broadcast on TV.
Yeah, I definitely think Mike Tirico is the best. I think he has the voice to kind of portray the moment, especially in those
Greg
nationally.
Olson is actually rising through my ranks too. Greg
He
Olson's
is,
good.
and he does a very good. Like you can obviously see when Greg calls a game, he's showing a good job of not being one-sided, right? Like the contrast to Greg Olson is Mark Sanchez, who
Yeah.
obviously has a vendetta against Washington, right? You could even go down the route of saying, what's his face, the two guys, Troy Aikman and Joe Buck, like
Buck,
they.
yeah.
Like, I really cannot stand them when they call Washington games. I'm
Yeah.
sorry, I just can't do it. I respect them and everything, but at the end of the day, like I just don't like how they call games, especially like Mark Sanchez. So I really love Mike Tirico. Greg Olson is growing on me, without a doubt. But there's another guy that I am completely forgetting, and I'm sorry that I can't think of it right now, James. But I would say Mike Tirico by far. I think it does a very good job in a nationally televised games of being able to portray the moment very well. And like if you go back to like Summerall and Madden, when you heard that voice, it was going down.
Yep.
And so when you hear Mike Tirico come on, you know it's going down. And I know he had issues with Gruden, and I don't think Gruden was good for that moment, to be perfectly honest with you. I think he's doing his best thing at Barstool right now. Do your thing, bro. But I think Tirico was obviously way too good for Gruden. So I think that honestly, I would put Bram up there in
Yeah.
terms of what he's able to do, and because he's in a very unique situation, calling Washington games, being a lifelong Washington fan. You have to be able to harness those emotions, but also portray the emotions in the right way. Like if something bad happens, you don't want to portray that on the viewer as much as possible because then you're kind of killing the vibe, right? But when something exciting happens, you really want to get that geared up. And it's hard for the kind of national guys to do that for Washington or any other team in particular because they don't have the emotional connection. But with Bram, that he does.
That Bengals call on the Jaden Daniels to Terry McLaurin game-winning touchdown. Just go back and like watch or listen to that call by Bram. That perfect, great excitement, great like in the moment, like calling the shot, like calling the play out. So, yeah, he just killed it in that moment. So definitely, Bram is definitely a good what he does.
Yeah, and I respect it wholeheartedly. Freddie Ham and I tried to do that for one preseason game where we tried doing play-by-play, and it's difficult, man. Like it
Yeah,
really is hard to do. If in live, trying to keep up and portraying exactly what's happening, and as much as it is easy to hear, it's hard to speak and do. And that's one thing that if you try to do it yourself, you kind of realize how difficult of a process that is. And then adding like ads and other things that has to come down the pipeline. But let's go to our thank you, James. That was a great question. The next question, this one was submitted in the Discord by our man Deluxe. Does the uniform reveal have the potential to end the honeymoon period for ownership? Not that it should.
yeah. I mean, I guess
It's that this is a
for
very in-depth, deep
that is
question.
that's a really good question. So I feel like there's always going to be that subsection of the fan base that's obsessed with the name and the old colors and the logo and whatever that may be. I will say that I don't think it'll end the honeymoon phase, but I do think it'll if they don't land the plane how how some of the louder fans or some of the fans want the team to land the plane per se. I do think there'll be some backlash of like, you told us you were going back to our original colors and you told us we were doing this and doing that. And you lied to us just like Dan Snyder lied to us all the time. And there'll be that type of like comparison of like, he's a liar and Dan's a liar and they're the same person and da 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 da. But I also see the other side of it where the younger fan base or some of the younger fans, like our age or younger, are going to be like, okay, they always like the new shiny thing. So I think there's always going to be people that are going to like it, and there's always going to be people that are going to oppose it just because of it's not exactly like it was back in the Joe Gibbs era. It doesn't say Redskins on it. It doesn't have the logo. It doesn't have anything tied to the past of the Redskins, so I hate it. I think majority of the people will land in the middle of it's cool, whatever. I just want to win games. But there's always going to be the people on
I think
the
that's the
extreme of
minority.
both sides. So
I think that's the minority in my personal opinion. This is a really good question from Deluxe because, I tweeted out when it was like when everyone was uploading their pictures of what it could possibly be. I put out there, I was like, I don't want to be in that grouping of people that are trying to predict what it's going to look like. You and I've said this to you before about like with the whole signing of Brandon Ayuk, of signing these other wide receivers that were possible. Like, what I don't want is for you to get hyped up for something just to be disappointed. And at the end of the day, that is something that you like. That's why I'm reserved in the idea of saying I just want to be surprised and excited for whatever is revealed. I am going because I know that this organization does not want the F grade in any sort of capacity. They're doing everything they can to be exceptional, to be exciting, to be cutting edge, to be the leaders in everything that they do. And so I know that, and so I'm going to say I trust them. They have shown that ability through everything that they have touched so far. So that being said, I don't, as much as the fan base has been putting out their predictions and everything, they're also setting themselves up to be disappointed in a capacity, in a way, because everyone wants to be right. Everyone wants to go back to what they uploaded and say, see, I told you this is what I was saying it was going to be, and this is what it is. And I understand the excitement about it. That's what Washington wants. It wants publicity. It wants people talking about it. But in the same breath, you're opening up the door to being shut out, if that makes sense. I just want everyone to be just excited for whatever is going to be revealed. This isn't going to be the Sean Taylor statue all over again, right? Just be excited for what's going to be brought to you. And honestly, whatever they decide. Do I think it's going to be the end of the honeymoon period? If that's the end of the honeymoon period for this franchise, this fan base has a lot of issues, to be perfectly honest with you. Got our quarterback, NFC Championship game, and you're going to tell me an alternate uniform reveal is the end of the honeymoon period. I don't care if they screw that up. They could come out with brown uniforms or no. They could come out with the yellow mustard uniforms. You know what I would still do? I'm still here smiling. I'm still here excited. I'm still here saying Josh Harris is the frickin' man, coming up with $6 billion to take us out of poverty. I'm still doing that. I know that's not the case for everyone. But we also have to take into consideration social media is not a real thing in the sense of human world. There are people out there who literally go out of their way to cause divide, to cause those kind of issues. I can't explain why they're there. I can't explain why they do what they do. All I'm telling you is that they are there. I'll never forget an interaction I had on social media with a guy saying that he was never going to buy Commander's gear, but he was thinking about buying Commander's gear. And we got into this argument. He was saying, well, I can't do that because I have to buy diapers. And my point was, well, diapers aren't that expensive. When you look at it, like if you look at NFL apparel is very expensive. Yeah. So if you're telling me you have money to buy NFL apparel, but you're not doing it because of the Commanders, pretty sure you can buy diapers was the argument that I was making. So it just seems like there's people who are doing this just to do it. And so at the end of the day, just realize that don't get roped into those kind of accounts and things. Just be excited for what comes down. Whatever it is, we're going to love it because guess what? We're winning football games. We have a bright future to worry about. Don't get misguided by the aesthetics of uniforms, of that. What matters most is on the football field. And right now you have something very excited to be about. You should be running 110 miles an hour, getting ready for training camp, getting ready for the season. Don't let a uniform cause you any issues, in my personal opinion. I'm not trying to tell you what to do, but that's just my word of advice, right? Now, the next question, this one was submitted by Jeff Miles, and this next one, I have to find it, was really, it made me worried because he brought up a really good point. His question is, congratulations, Jeff. Him and his wife are expecting. Very happy for you, brother.
Nice.
Also,
Congrats.
the artist who did the Terry McLaurins portrait at the stadium and other Commanders paintings at the stadium. Very talented guy. Love Jeff Miles to death. His question is, would a team having McLaurin jerseys for sale under the new unis. Give us any hint to how contract negotiations are going.
True.
I told him I haven't been worried at all about the Terry situation. I've been very confident that things are going to happen. But when he said that, I was like, man, you're killing that quickly, bro.
Yeah, no, I was like, damn, I didn't even think about that. So he's saying like if they go on sale, does that mean like the
They are on sale.
Oh, really? Hmm. I mean, that just feels like to me that they're just confident that the deal is going to get done, but also people are like acting like, oh, there's no deal coming, so like he's not going to be a Commander this year. He's still under contract for like one more year, so like they can sell McLaurin jerseys this year under the pretenses of, well, he's on our team this year, so like why wouldn't we advertise those and put those on Front Street and sell those, so and market those. So it's definitely a good question, but I just think that because he's still on a contract for this year, he's pretty much the face, if like the 1A face of this franchise and this team right now, and it has been to the face of the franchise for a while. He's under contract for a year, so they're going to market their best player, second best player, and they're going to put him out there on Front Street for everyone to buy their jerseys and make money off of. So I don't think it's any correlation, but it's definitely something to think about.
Got him. I got him. So, yeah, he freaked me out when he uploaded this. But the first question that comes to mind, you have to use a critical kind of thinking here. As much as you see that and say, oh, the Terry McLaurin's jerseys are for sale during a negotiation for a contract and he's holding out, that's something that's going to make you think twice about how things are going. It made me think twice. But you also have to utilize critical thinking. Is my first question to Jeff was, well, are there other players' jerseys that are for sale? And he said, yes, of course. Okay, then. Then there's not much to concern about.
Also, I just thought about this. So they're about to unveil these new jerseys and whatnot, these alternate jerseys. Maybe they're trying to make a little bit more room. Like, hey, let's get these regular Terry McLaurin jerseys off the racks. We got these new ones coming in with the new alternate look. Like, we got to make some room for these. So let's put these on sale with other players on sale as well. So now we can sell the newer jerseys.
Bravo, sir. Very good job using critical thinking there. And I agree with you. Does it give me any hint at how contract negotiations are going? No, it doesn't. I think that we all, same with the uniform kind of thing, we all just need to chill out a little bit. Just let it play. Like, obviously, you want Terry to have this kind of situation, to have that. Like, I even saw today an article uploaded that, like, the Bills, I think it was by Yahoo Sports, like, the Bills fans are going crazy over a Josh Allen, Terry McLaurin trade. I was like, what is going on?
Josh Allen for Terry McLaurin.
Dude, I don't know. I didn't click on it. I didn't want to give it a click to give them what they wanted.
I did see something where, like, people were saying that, like, the Bills should be blowing up the Commander's phone because they need a number one receiver, and Terry would be like a great fit with Josh Allen. But if someone offered a Josh Allen for Terry McLaurin trade, they need to delete that article ASAP. That's crazy.
That's just what I saw, and I don't know if it's 100%. You could go look it up on Google if you want, but that's what I saw, and I was like, that's ridiculous. But regardless, I don't think it's a hint, Jeff, at how negotiations are going. At face value, I just think that if anything, it's kind of the Washington's way of kind of saying we could walk away from this. We don't want to get that high of a number, right? But I also am under the mindset, like David Harrison talked about, once training camp comes around, then you announce it. I think that they very much have they have an agreement in place. It's just they're waiting. And there's a good reason.
Also, people are pointing back to like San Francisco and look at all their contract negotiations when it came to Debo, Brandon Ayuk, and players like that. Like, yeah, things got a little bit tense, and you heard this report and that report and da-da-da-da-da. Eventually, the players got their money from San Francisco. So a lot of people are like, hey, this is what San Francisco did. Adam Peters obviously bringing that San Francisco philosophy here. Things will work themselves out eventually, is what the people are saying.
Yeah, and Terry is not Brandon Ayuk. He's not going to get a deal.
Yeah, he's not going to go on the pivot and be like, I don't want to play on this team.
Well, yeah, and he's not going to turn down a deal that he turns around and ends up accepting a month later just because he didn't want to go to training camp, right? Like, I think Terry McLaurin is very much a team guy and wants to be at training camp. So if that deal does get presented, he would take it. And that's how I truly feel about it. I am not concerned. As much as this question did bring me some little bit jump in concern, once you start thinking about it, it really has nothing to do with it, And I think that your explanation was spot on into what could possibly be it, because I think that they are anticipating the excitement over the uniform and how much it could sell, and it makes sense that they would create more space and inventory for how many they are expecting to have brought in.
Also, it makes you think that they
Submitted.
are kind of going back to basically the old look because they're like, hey, we need to make some room. These things are going to fly off the shelves because the fans are going to love them so much. So,
Yep. I'm excited for those people that have been boycotting the Commanders to finally be brought back and be
oh,
buying.
they don't know.
I'm very AJ
They'll make up
Schmidt.
another reason. It doesn't say Redskins on it, so it's not the same.
Yeah. Well, no, AJ Schmidt. I'm very excited for him to be one of the biggest supporters of the Commanders now. Now that they release these new uniforms, whenever on July 9th. The next question from Jeff Miles. If y'all are AP and it's mid-late July and Noah Brown isn't showing any sign of coming back, do you show any interest in signing undrafted free agent? Well, undrafted free agent, but I would say free agent.
Yeah. Yeah. Like AP always says, they're always looking, combing through the league, combing through the roster, seeing where they can improve here, improve there, and just like how we got Noah Brown last year. If a team cuts a guy during training camp at some point in time, and AP, Dan Quinn, the receiver coach, Cliff Kingsbury, all these guys, they say, hey, we see XYZ traits in this guy. I think he'll fit in our system. Let's go out and get him. Let's go out and get this guy. And I definitely can see them doing that. But I'm just going to go back to obviously, like, I know you're like, right, like, they don't have to give an update about Noah Brown till training camp. But in this day and age, you feel like something would have slipped out by now as far as like what he had going on. And then we saw flyers on Instagram about him like going to a football camp and whatnot. So hopefully everything's good with him. But yeah, to the question, yeah, AP said all the time in these interviews that they're always looking to improve the roster in the offseason, during the season, trade deadline, whatever it may be. So if they see a guy, they like him, I can see them definitely going to get him.
Yep. Now this last question from Jeff Miles. Oh no, I already asked it. I'm sorry, I had a brain fart. I was thinking about my slip and slide. I can't really explain that one. But I think remember what they did with Martavius Bryant last year? They brought him in just to see, right?
Yep.
But that being said, you do have guys here that have worked hard throughout the offseason and OTAs, minicamp. Ja'Cory Brooks, for example, Chris Moore. Obviously, Michael Gallup being injured is another one that you could talk about. But KJ Osborne himself could very well earn that opportunity. Would you go down the route of trying to replace Noah Brown with a free agent? Is there anybody out there that you could really pluck in to say that they would solidify B, wide receiver 2, that has the same similar stature and play style as Noah Brown? I don't think so. Noah Brown was a very good commodity to bring on. And so I don't think that's possible. So you give your guys the chance to do it. Now, would you want to add to the arsenal, the ammunition at the bottom? Of course you would. But you wouldn't go down the route of signing a guy just to be up there to be starting for you. It's going to be hard to be able to do that. Maybe after cuts and things like that, you maybe go down that route once it gets down a couple weeks into training camp and guys are being released and let go, kind of like what happened with Noah Brown last year. So you're always at the ready, right? Like Adam Peters said. But with Noah, I do think that I would always be invested into getting somebody in here just to add to the unit. But that being said, they added Debo. They added Jalen Lane. It's time for guys to step up. They got Ja'Cory Brooks, the undrafted free agent, who everyone's been talking about and saying that he's done very well. This is a good time for them to step up. You give them the chance first before just straight up replacing them. That's what Dan Snyder would have done. Let's not do that. Let's make sure we're giving our guys who've worked hard the chance to showcase themselves if they're able to go out there and prove it. And somebody like Anthony Armstrong is a great example of giving an opportunity and doing the most they can with it.
Well, to your point, I mean, I'm sure they're telling guys inside the building like, hey, because not like the way I'm gonna say it, but I'm sure they're saying like, hey, be ready, stay ready, because you never know what's gonna happen. They're always telling players that. But if you just look at Noah Brown's history throughout his career, he's always got some type of injury that's plaguing him. He's always missing games here and there. So, to your point, guys like Luke McCaffrey that have been here, been in the system, it's on them to kind of step up and get that first shot of like, hey, this is what I can provide for the offense and for the team now that this guy's gone down. But at the end of the day, like you said, training camp and shoulder pads and helmets and shells is different from live action bullets on Sunday. So you never know how guys are going to react.
Absolutely. All right, everybody. That's going to wrap us up for this episode. If you made it this far, you're a freaking champion. Thank you to James Bonato. Thank you to the Colonel. Thank you to Jeff Miles and Deluxe for your questions for this episode. We want to hear what you guys have to say about the uniforms, what you expect. As much as I was talking about predicting would make you disappointed, we'd love to hear your thoughts and your excitement level, and also with the Terry McLaurin situation. Just reach out. We'd love to hear from you. The guy, Melvin, I believe his name was on YouTube, he's commented on the past 2 episodes. If he wants to buy a Sean Taylor jersey from us, I'm not 100% sure what he means by that. I mean, like, this isn't for sale. This is a Redskins Taylor jersey. I wish I could. I have a black one. I can't really sell that to you, brother. I mean, I would love to help you out and being able to push you in the way of getting one online. I'm not 100% sure. So Melvin, please reach out again. I responded. He didn't respond. So I would just love to hear from you again. But we want to hear from you guys. We appreciate you guys. Excited for July 9th and the uniform reveal. Possibly see you again, a new episode on Wednesday to talk about the uniform reveal. But if not, we'll see you again next Sunday. Maybe Reed will show his face. All right, everybody. I'm Kyle.
I'm Hall.
And we'll see you next time. Washington football. Woo!
Peace.
What's up, everyone? This is Kyle from the Burgundy Zone. We are releasing our own merch to support the show. If you want to rock the Burgundy Zone logo or you want to see Reed's face on your shirt, we got it. We're starting with t-shirts, hoodies, and zip-up. So if you're a fan of the show, make sure you snag one before they are gone. Check out the link in our bio on Instagram, or you can find the link in the description of the video. Thanks again for all your support. Until next time.